today at our CompU class, our online Zoom school for those who are at home and need a little stimulation for their memories. I understand that you are our executive director for Gathering Place. Can you tell me what the goals of Gathering Place are?
Yeah, actually, I'm the CEO and the executive director. We don't have an official executive director. I'm the CEO and I just do everything. Yeah, so the goals of the Gathering Place are there's four goals for the Gathering Place. And first off, it's to give caregivers a time to rest and to take a break from their caregiving obligations. Um, the second one is to provide stimulating activities to improve the quality of our participants' lives, which may actually delay the progression of Alzheimer's disease. Third is to help churches build their outreach ministries to families affected by dementia in their congregations and in their communities. And fourth is to provide education to caregivers and the community about dementia. So that's what we do as part of the Gathering Place.
Excellent. I know the most important for me has been the education for caregivers because I really didn't know what I was getting myself into. Can you tell me about the various programs that you started to meet the needs of the families and to educate the public?
Sure. Now, make sure that you understand our founder, Brenda Moss, is the one that started this program, and she started all of these various programs that we have. But just to let you know, our Gathering Place respite socials, of course, were started in 2007. And before COVID, we now provide 42 hours of free respite each month in 10 churches in Brazoria County, so that we cover every Wednesday in Alvin each month, and then we have 5 in South County also each month. So there's 10 churches. Brain Camp, which is our small group training to help individuals maximize their brain health, that was started in 2011. And we've taught over 1,000 people how to build their cognitive reserve and how to hold off the onset of Alzheimer's disease during that time. The Brazoria County Alzheimer's Awareness Project was started in 2012. And this project, it provides annual conferences and resource fairs. We do annual memory screenings in the libraries. We have an annual first responder training at the Sheriff's Department. We also have our annual memory fair, our brain fair at the fairgrounds in Angleton. We also do what we call Memory Matters events at senior living facilities. These are little hour-and-a-half mini health fairs that we do. We try to do it in 4 different places each year. And we have some other awareness activities that go on in the community. And from the Alzheimer's Awareness Project, we have interacted with more than 10,500 people during this time with this project.
Now, Dale, you mentioned memory screening. What is involved in that?
Well, that's where we have our volunteers at 9 different libraries in Brazoria County in November each year. We use the mini cognition exam. It's 6 questions, 9 points, and so we advertise it. And we get a conference room at these 9 libraries, and we have volunteers there. It's usually 10:30 to 5:30 each day that we're there. And people come in out of the community, and we do these memory screenings. It takes about 5 minutes. So that's something we've been doing since we got started. In fact, it's the largest community-based memory screening in the entire United States. Okay.
That's wonderful. And if this is completely free to the public?
Of course. Everything we do is free.
No referral for a doctor or anything. You mentioned the cognitive something test. Is this different from that old draw a clock test?
No, the draw the clock is in this.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
it's the one that's been tried and true
Yeah,
for
yeah, yeah.
a
It's
while.
the easiest one for us to do. There's another one that the doctors give called the mini mental status exam, and it's 30 points, okay? And it's not any harder, it just takes longer. And this one is real quick, just to identify if there's anything going
I know I'm getting off task a little bit, but
on.
how accurate are these tests? Do we have any idea?
They're as good as the people are honest when they answer it.
Very good. Very
Okay,
good.
let me tell you a few other things. We do a bunch of stuff. I run two support groups, which are monthly meetings for caregivers. They were started. First one was started in Angleton in 2014, and we started one in Alvin in 2017. And Jeanette, you've started coming to the one there in Alvin now. We've been doing those on Zoom since we can't meet in person. And well, not Zoom. We've been doing them on conference call. The other group in Houston that I run, we do that one on Zoom, and that one's tonight. Um, we also have an affiliated company called Early Stage Coaches. That became active in 2016, and that provides one-on-one mentoring for early stage patients. And we provide that service in Angleton and in Alvin. And uh, so Janice Bell is our coach in Alvin, and Audrey here in the office is the coach here in Angleton. And we also, Brenda also started a program called Metacamp, okay, and it's a senior weight loss program that was started in 2019. And we are actually doing that one online on Zoom. Last week was the first Zoom session. I think we have 5 students. And tomorrow we're going to have their support group on Zoom also. So the way that program works is they have a classroom one week, and then the next week they have an hour support where they can get together and talk about how they're doing losing weight, what recipes they share, stuff like that. And then they have another class the week after that. So it's over 2 months, it's 4 classes and essentially 3 support groups, the ones in between. Anyway, so tomorrow is there's the first support group on Zoom.
I'm sure that that's very beneficial to have the support group there, especially while we're staying home. Now you
Yeah.
mentioned the gathering place as one of the chief activities that you're involved with. I've noticed at each gathering there is an agenda that's followed. Is there any reason to have things done in a certain order and to include certain activities each week?
Yes. Um, yeah, specifically, so in trials and studies since 2006, the stimulating activities that are required at each one of the gatherings, which are reminiscing, exercise, music, arts and crafts, and games and bingo. Those have proven to slow cognitive decline in many Alzheimer's patients. So, for example, music increases oxytocin, enhances camaraderie, promotes ability to learn and recall memories that are usually pleasant. Okay, arts and crafts satisfy a need for somebody to be creative and productive. Exercise helps reduce stress, agitation, and frustration, and it gets the blood flowing through your brain, which is very important. Reminiscing activities provide memory retrieval practice, which may improve cognitive ability. And of course, everybody likes to win a prize at bingo.
Of course. How many people have been served through gathering places since its inception? Any idea?
Yeah, so we've served at least 345 people in our respite program since 2007. And there's probably a few more now that some of you all have joined us on CompU.Talk. Okay, those numbers were as of like February. And I know a few other people have joined. It's usually about once a year we go through the rolls and add it up. But anyway, so that's how many. Yeah.
Now, I understand that there's always lunch provided at these gatherings. Where does the money come from?
Well, the money for the lunches comes from a grant that we get from the from the county. It's called the Community Development Block Grant. It's part of HUD, Housing and Urban Development. Um, and I apply for those every year, and they're specifically for food at our gatherings. So that's why we have to keep attendance. That's one of the reasons that we need to know your specific dementia diagnosis. Okay, we need it so that we know how to interact with you when we have our volunteers and when we do our thing. But the HUD needs to know that they are feeding people in that have issues and have needs. Okay, so it's part of their rules too. So that's why we have to do that.
Well, I understand that the lunch money comes through the HUD grant,
Right.
but what about the money for things like Meta Camp and Brain Camp? I know my first Brain Camp, I paid a small fee, and then each year when I've gone back, it's cost zero. How do you even pay your instructors?
Okay, so the money that we get, and let me just tell you, so in 2019, okay, our money came from 41% of our money came from a United Way grant. Okay, so I apply for that every year. So 41% of our money came from United Way. 25% of our money came from our fundraising for our brain fair. Okay. 21% of our money came from grants, and the CDBG grant is one of those. The Lowry grant I apply for every year is one of those. We used to get Dow grants, but Dow doesn't do that anymore. And sometimes we get women building community grants. Okay, so that was 21%. 8% of our money comes from donations. I make a monthly donation through PayPal every month, and it just, I signed up for it, and it just goes on and on and on and on. But people write checks to us for different reasons. And then 5% of our money comes from memorials. Okay, so that's where our money comes from.
Now, you did mention that people are free to make their own personal donations.
Right.
And you did say that PayPal was an option.
Right.
Are there any other options for online giving?
Well, our online giving, if you go to our website and click on donate, it's run through PayPal.
I see.
Now, that doesn't mean you have to use PayPal. If you look at the page and you look down at the bottom, it says, do you want to use a credit card? And you can click on that. Okay. Now, if you have a PayPal account, it's real easy. If you want to use a credit card, that's fine, but PayPal administers it.
I see.
And they take their 2.2% and 35 cents per transaction.
That was my next question is how do you keep the administrative costs down when you need to go through an outside server like that?
Yeah, it hurts. So if you're not in a big hurry, write us a check. And be sure to send it to the post office box, because if you send it to our physical address, you will get it back. Okay? We don't get mail at 200 East Mulberry.
What is the post office address?
It's P.O. Box 2050. And
2050.
And be sure you use the post office's zip code 77516. If you put the post office box on there and you put 77515 on it, they'll still send it back to you. I hate the Angleton post office.
Oh my goodness. Well, maybe we can talk to somebody in city government or something to light a fire under them so they understand the numbers a little bit better. I understand that there's 3 employees in the Angleton office. What are their jobs?
Okay, well, there's actually 2 employees in the office. I do have 3 part-time employees. Audrey Calhoun is my marketing person, and she's one of the coaches for early stage coaches. And then Kim Raber is the bookkeeper, but she's also taken on the front desk job. So she does that like Mondays and Wednesdays, and on Tuesdays she's doing bookkeeping. So today she's back there writing checks for bills and payroll and stuff like that. Okay, now the other employee that we have is Lorinda Baldwin. You know Lorinda. Now, Lorinda's salary is paid through that CDBG grant. We get that grant also has her salary besides the food. Okay, so we get reimbursed for her salary. But those are the three part-time employees I have.
And is Lorenda's job primarily record keeping?
No, Lorinda's job is to keep all the team leaders in line and don't let things screw up at each gathering, okay, and make sure that the forms get filled out and signed and everybody's got that stuff together. But her job is also to greet the caregivers as they bring in their loved one, check on them, see how they're doing, see if there's anything new we need to understand, things like that. So she follows up with the caregivers also, besides that.
So her job involved going to every gathering as a consistent person then
That's what she
for the
does.
caregiver.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what she does when she doesn't have a broken hip, and then she's going to have surgery, a knee replacement. So she's a mess right now. Poor thing.
Well, this is unusual times right now, and I
It
think we all
is.
understand that. You know, when people donate money to a cause, they always want to know how much money the executives make. The first thing I look at is what percentage is executive pay and administrative cost. May I ask you about your salary and the salaries of your leaders?
Sure. So our organization is volunteer led. So none of our leadership receives any salaries. We all do this for the love of our participants, caregivers, volunteers, and communities. And it's because we truly want to make a difference. So
And
I don't,
that you are.
you couldn't afford me. Let's just put it that way. You couldn't afford me.
I know you put in many, many, many hours every week, and we're all very grateful for you and for Brenda. And it's uplifting to know that both of you are doing this just out of the love in your hearts to make a difference in the world. So I
Well,
thank you.
this, and I mean, and this is for all of our, I mean, this is what all our volunteers do. You know, like Erica Longoria is our education coordinator. That's all volunteer. You know, Eva King is the respite coordinator. That's all volunteer. The stuff that Peggy does with the advisory council and stuff for Alvin, that's all volunteer. So all of our volunteers do this because we want to make a difference.
Very good, very good. I understand that it's been just about a year since you lost your wife, Joyce, to Alzheimer's. Can you tell us some things about her?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so my wife had younger onset Alzheimer's, which means the symptoms came on before the age of 65. And in fact, they came on in her early 50s. It took us a few years to get a diagnosis. So she got diagnosed in 2011. She was 57, and she was already moderate stage Alzheimer's by then. Um, and just kind of went downhill from there. Um, she came to a couple gatherings, and you know, I ended up I had people come and help me with her for a number of years. I retired in 2013 so I could take care of her full time at home, and I still needed people to come and help, and so I did that. And finally, in 2015, I put her at Country Village in the memory care because even with help, we couldn't take care of her at home anymore. And then she ended up in the nursing home. She was on hospice for a year and a half before I finally took her off of that. And and then finally, last year, she choked on her breakfast one morning. Thought she was okay. Must have aspirated her um, sausage that she choked on because that night her lungs filled up and she died.
I'm so sorry for your loss. She definitely deserves to be remembered, and I know she's played a major role in guiding you into the volunteer work that you devote so much of your life to.
Yeah, I mean,
You have,
I mean, honestly, I mean, she was a wonderful wife, a wonderful mother, a wonderful grandmother, loved her kids and her grandkids. Um, and before she got sick, I mean, we traveled as much as we could. We went to concerts all the time. That's why you see me on Facebook all the time. You used to see us on Facebook all the time. She loved to drive her Corvette. She was a big volunteer in a lot of organizations. I mean, she started a soup kitchen in Victoria in 1986 that's still in business.
wow.
In fact, they serve 16,000 meals in June.
Oh my.
Just unbelievable numbers. So yeah, no, she did. It was good.
Very special person. You did mention that it was several years before she was diagnosed, and I know that times have changed since then. Is it still taking years for people to be diagnosed with Alzheimer's?
Well, okay. So typically, what happens? First off, It typically comes on kind of slow, and you don't recognize it, and you make excuses for it, and so you're in denial and things like that. And then when you decide that, hey, something's really not right, well, you got to make sure you get to a good neurologist. Okay. So we started to see a neurologist in 2009. It turns out the guy was a quack. Okay. And it took me 2 years before we could finally get into Baylor. And that's when we got the diagnosis. So we'd been at this for a couple of years. And then before that, it was just kind of, you know, I didn't see that there were things going on. Okay. And so typically nowadays, it hasn't changed any. Okay. First off, it comes on slow, you don't necessarily recognize it. And then lots of times you're in denial that there's anything going on. And then if you go to your primary care physician, they're not the people you want to go to. Okay. You need to go to a neurologist, and you need to go to a reputable place. Okay. Um, to get that diagnosis. Okay. So if you can get it sooner, that's great. We lost 2 years. Okay. Now, did that make any difference? Well, in the grand scheme of things, no. I mean, she died at 65. Okay. Last year she was 65 years old. Okay. Um, so, but for 2 years, we could have been doing something else. Okay. I mean, I could have retired. If I'd known that's what it was, I could have retired 2 years early. I mean, I didn't have to wait and do what I did. I could have retired early. And we could have gone and done a bunch of stuff until she just couldn't do it anymore. But I didn't know what was going on, kind of thing. So, yeah.
That's why Alzheimer's education is so important
Yes.
for not only our guests, but for their caregivers
Yep.
to know that there is help out there. And Dale, you have so much weight on your shoulders. I don't know how you do it all. Are you actively seeking volunteers?
Okay, so let me just run through a quick list here. So we did our um, strategic planning for the next 5 years, and I ran through that yesterday. And let me just tell you the kind of things that I could use some help with. For instance, I could easily use a fundraising committee leader. I mean, you saw how much money we raised with the brain fair. Okay, well, I do that, and we could use somebody, and we could use committee members too that like to go out and beg for money. I mean, that's what it amounts to. You beg for money. We could use a volunteer coordinator. Okay, we have 150 Gathering Place volunteers, and we could use somebody that could shepherd them, keep an eye on them, check on them, make sure that they're doing all right. If they need anything, help us with this and that. I mean, I've got a whole list of things for that. We have another part of the organization I didn't mention earlier, but we have a speakers bureau, which right now is mostly myself and Erica Longoria and Brenda, where we go out and speak and give talks about the Alzheimer's, our programs, Gathering Place at different organizations. We could use a coordinator for that who could get some more people to be on the Speakers Bureau and actively go down the roles of all of the service organizations in Brazoria County and actually contact them and say, hey, you need a speaker? We got people. Okay. We could use that. We could use a training coordinator. Okay. We're supposed to be, and we do this, we're supposed to be training our volunteers biannually. So everybody gets trained every 2 years on the Gathering Place programs and stuff like that. Okay. Well, that's a big undertaking. It's like herding cats. Okay.
Yes.
And we could use somebody to be our training coordinator to pull that stuff together and also work. We want to rework our training. Okay. We're going to try to see if we can't break up the training, modularize it, maybe even record portions of it, stuff like that, where maybe certain volunteers only need certain kind of training instead of all of the stuff we go through. Okay. Well, that's, we can certainly do that, but it takes somebody to sit down and figure that stuff out and try to, put it all together. Okay. And then there's a there's a program that we've talked about trying to put together, a comprehensive program for caregivers and families, like maybe a spa day or yoga or something like that. And we could actually have it next door at First Presbyterian Church here in Angleton. But we could use somebody that would want to develop and coordinate that. Okay. So there's a number of things on our strategic plan that would help us move forward. Okay. But it takes volunteers and it takes people who want to do something. And like, the fundraising, don't mind getting on their knees, wearing their knees out, begging for money. Okay. I mean,
Well,
that's
we
how it,
appreciate you doing all of this for us and for the people that we love. And I know that you've got so much on your shoulders and your time is very valuable. And thank you so much for joining us today. I'd love to have a chance to